بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون.
So we love you. We thank everyone for coming. And so we just want to start off with a prayer. And when we get to a prayer, we just like to think about memory lane. And some of us youngsters, we wasn't here. A lot of us born in the nation. So I thought I'd pray first. You're always supposed to thank God. And He's always ever present. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. So, and we're going to bring Brother Lester up to explain how he did this. History is all have it here. We got grandsons from the Honorable Muhammad here. So I'm born in the nation of Islam. Sister Fatimah does how much work that we have been done by our pioneers and how much work that us, the new generation of pioneers, got to continue the course. So let us, brother, I'm bringing up Brother Leslie on the camera. So that's my part. Thank you, alhamdulillah. Thank you everybody for coming.
I'm just going to speak briefly because really this exhibit that we have here today is something very similar to what we did in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Mosque number 10. And really, it's not so much me, it's the sisters that really put this exhibit together. In Atlantic City was Dr. Ridgeland Goddard, Sister Gawanda Abdullah, and the brother by the name of Ralph Hunter. This was in Jersey. And it went so well that once the exhibit went up in this gallery, it's called the African American Heritage Museum in Atlantic City, New Jersey, the Atlantic City Public Library, their people came in one day and they saw the exhibit and they said they wanted it at the library. In fact, they said not the library, we want it at the Historical Boardwalk Museum on the boardwalk in Atlantic City. And it just so happened that during that same time the city council had sold that building or that site on the boardwalk where they would held all of the historical pieces for Atlantic City, New Jersey. So they said, okay, we're going to bring this exhibit right into the public library. And they had held it there for 3 months. And they just ran programs around that exhibit dealing simply with the Muslim community in South Jersey and our national, the national community. And what's unique about that exhibit down there is we had a lot of time Muhammad Ali would come in town. He would spend time with us. He would spend time in the temple, time on the streets in Atlantic City, the fights and all that stuff. So we had a lot of history. And we had a brother in Atlantic City by the name of Minister Woodrow Love, who recorded a lot of the history of the community, probably from the very beginning when he came in, all the way up until maybe the late 60s or maybe even early 70s. In fact, I would visit him from time to time. But right now today, this exhibit is really about 3 other sisters that really helped put this together. One is Sister Angie Ali. You'll see a lot of the stuff that's framed, all of these books. Sister Angie Ali did most of this work. And these 2 sisters here, Dr. Fatimah Muhammad and Dr. Lynn Muhammad. So what we want to do here is hopefully to duplicate something similar to what we did in Atlantic City, whereas we take this exhibit here, and then we begin to have others say, okay, we want that exhibit in our location. Or start bringing the school children in, bringing classes in, the different MSAs from around the area, and others to see our history. But most importantly is that we're going to tell our history. We're going to tell our truth. We're going to tell our story. And that's really what we're trying to do here today. And what we have here today is mainly a whole lot of the community. And that's what my focus was on, really trying to bring community. What we were doing in the community, the businesses, the family life, and building model communities. All of the stuff that we did in the past, we was trying to bring about. So I'm not going to talk anymore because I really enjoy listening to Dr. Lynn Muhammad and Dr. Fatimah Muhammad. So I'm going to bring Dr. Fatimah Muhammad, and she's already done some great things. When you look at evolution of the community, the documentary, this is what this sister did. Dr. Lynn Muhammad has already written books, and hopefully we'll get to that second book about the history of the community. So they're working in the field. This is hopefully, what I'm doing here is just helping them. My real focus and my real passion is economics. But we have to tell this story, and then hopefully we can get back to actually building model Islamic communities and rebuilding our brand. That's what we want. Thank you, Dr. Lynn Muhammad. Dr. Fatimah Muhammad.
All right. Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Brother Lester, for bringing me into this officially, this gallery exhibit idea. It means so much because it's making our story official. We're not worried about somebody else telling our story for us. We are our own voices, and so I'm so glad to be able to be a part of it. And like he mentioned, I did make, in 1995, I made the documentary Evolution of a Community, where I got to interview Imam Muhammad and began piecing together some of the, at that point it had been 20 years since the passing of Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I got to retrace some of those steps, just talking about, well, retracing what Imam Muhammad was doing for Black Muslims or African American Muslims. We were here and we were claiming ours. And that's the point, to claim something and build. We're not trying to copy anybody else or be another version of somebody else or some other community. This is us in a real idea of it. And so I'm so excited that we were also able to, we've been able to put together and build on and work with others who have seen this as an important mission also. Remember that used to be called us, American Muslim Mission. Anyway, I enjoy retracing all of that. I guess that's the documentary maker. And that's all I wanted to say. Sister Lynn is going to, or Dr. Lynn Muhammad is going to come up and give you a more, use the right words for how to explain what this is and what this transition from the Nation of Islam to Al-Islam really means for us as a gallery exhibit, and the idea that this is going to be the new model of how we talk about us. Not going to be some other version or sent off as part of some terrorist group or not. That's not us. That's never been us.
Right.
So we're just keeping the story straight, letting the record reflect the real ideas and the real lives that have been impacted in how we've changed the United States. And we are a beacon in the world, for real. Our community is demonstrating what the whole Black experience has been about and what Al-Islam did to add to that and make that meaningful so that we can be meaning makers. All right, that's all.
Thank you.
I want to welcome all of you all. I'm going to give you a little bit of history on the location where we are and then go immediately into the unveiling of the pieces that we have. This location that we're in right now is actually my husband's business. It's called Clara Photos. And when Nafisa and I first got together and we were talking about our experience in this community, we both had a desire to give back. We grew up in this community, we both had a desire to give back. And one of the things that Nafis constantly said that he wanted to do was to tell the story of the community as we lived it. Not still shots, not candid, not shots that you would post shots. He wanted to tell the story from the perspective of the people that were doing the work, that were engaged in the work, and not necessarily those who were just posing for the pictures. So he spoke about having a place where youth could come and learn from us and experience what we had experienced. So we were talking about a business piece which included maybe a way for people to sit down and eat a little bit and just socialize, but while that was happening, there would be things around them that would allow them to learn. So create an environment that allowed them to learn. So we toyed around with the idea a little bit, and eventually he said, oh, I want to take pictures and capture the history. So we were taking these pictures, and then we were like, okay, we can do more with that. We went to the Smithsonian Museum, African American History Museum. They came to our community. They received artifacts from us. It was great. Everybody was feeling very positive about it. I know I was. I know a lot of people that contributed to the event, their artifacts to the event that was put together, eventually put together. It was great. We went there. We were about that much of what they had. And what they showed was from us from the 70s. It was us mixed in with the efforts of Hampton and the individuals who were responsible for the Black Panther Party and a lot of the things that we were doing in the militant 70s. And it showed a very militant us. And I was like, okay, that was a piece of us, but that's not who we really were. And I'm still looking in the rest of the museum for us as a group, and I didn't see it. So after we went through all the different, it's based on a timeline, so after we went through all the different time periods, and we got to the end, there was this big, huge screen, and they had pictures and pictures and pictures, and the pictures included pictures of us, but there were no captions, there was no explanation, it was just the pictures. And I was like, okay, if you know the history, that's powerful, but if you don't know the history, you're like, what's going on? So I saw that as a contribution, but not a great contribution. And I went to the DeSable Museum, Hyde Park, Chicago, not too far from where I went to school for most of my school experience. I'm thinking the DeSable Museum is part of African American history, maybe. Let's go see. Took my students this past summer. The only part of African American history in that museum that reflected us was in the bookstore, and it was a picture of Al-Haji Malik Shabazz and Muhammad Ali shaking hands. No explanation, just a picture being sold in the bookstore. That's it. And we covered pretty much the museum. Now I know at one point they had a piece on our history, but it was not a standard piece that they kept in there. So it was a Juma Friday when we were on this field trip, and I happened to go to Juma at the Mosque Cares, and I ran into Brother Lester, and I was hot because I'm like, when is our history going to be told correctly? And he told me about this. He told me about what had been done in Atlantic City that he explained at the beginning, and he brought up the suggestion because he knew that we had the space, and my husband had already been talking about showcasing our community. He was talking about doing it in different formats. And so alhamdulillah, Allah brought all of us together at the right place at the right time so that we could be able to do this. And so that's the history of how we wound up doing this. So in line with what, we have a businessman right here who was in business when I was a child, His daughter went to school with my sister, and they're still friends to this day. And he has been in business, and he has a product that was actually developed by our community. He brought a sample with him today. Most of you all are already familiar with the name I am, Brother Charles. But he brought a sample of it with us today to remind us of that. And at the same time, it's a revelation of the timeless effort that he has put in, and many other business people like that. But he had his roots, his started within our community way back, at the time that we were making those strong strides into the community with economic development. Did you learn how to bake before? Because I know you worked at the bakery. Where did you learn how to bake?
In Washington, D.C., Shabazz Bakery.
So he learned how to bake in our community.
I started as a janitor.
As a janitor.
Yeah.
And eventually, and then he learned how to bake, and now that's his life. And that's how he helped to raise his children,
Right.
was as a baker. Because something he learned within our community. Education for becoming a doctor, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to get back to the community. I went to the Clara school, and I said, what do you need? They said, we need a science curriculum. This is Brother Clara. And I said, okay, no problem. So I wrote science curriculum. I was like, what the heck is a curriculum number one? And what do you need? What does it mean? Because I went to school to be a doctor, not to be an education doctor, but to be a medical doctor. So I'm working with this. My sister's in education. Hey, Grandpa, guess what? I got to do a curriculum. What do I do? So she's like, you do this, you do that. So she was my first teacher in the field of education. So we wrote it. So I went back to Clara. Here it is, curriculum from grades K through 9. He said, now I need you to teach. What? Teach? How? What? How does that work? So he threw me into a classroom, and she was my principal. This person right here sitting in front of me was my principal. I'm sorry to point, so I apologize for pointing. I'm trying to point so it's not so obvious that I'm pointing. But she was my principal. I knew nothing about education. I was doing medical science. He didn't know anything about baking. He was doing janitorial work. I was taught I learned how to be a teacher by being in the classroom. Eventually I went back to school and I got my degree in education. And they said, but you already know this stuff. How did I know it? Because I learned it in our community. Because there were people who nurtured us and gave us what we needed so that we could learn those professions. So we had a system for preparing people. And when I went to college and got my degrees, they were like, who taught you? Like, where did you get this from? We got it from people who had a heart of gold, some experience, some education experience maybe, and some experience maybe, but they had a heart of gold that gave us the ability to learn more than what they were teaching in those universities. And eventually I was asked to teach at the university where I was getting my teaching degree, because he said you have something to offer that most of our students don't. And they asked me to be a teacher even though I wasn't finished with school yet, because I brought something to the table, and I brought to the table what I learned in this community. And I'm just putting it out there. We made questions for them to have quizzes. The answers are in the back, and then we have this picture with many faces on it that represents the history of our community, local and nationally. And then on the back is a quiz. So do you know who these people are? And then on the inside are the answers. So you can, just in case you don't know who they are, here it is. So it's designed to be a textbook for the children. And we're working on a second one. I called for interviews. I called for bios and pictures for this past February. I didn't get any. I'm telling you all right now. Your parents or you or
I got pictures.
okay, alhamdulillah. So we need to tell the story. So we can give you, I'll give you my business card, but you get it to us, it'll be in the next volume. So, and we, alhamdulillah, the people are asking for this now, we're selling out, so we're ready for the next volume. Yes.
Two things, so we got the time. We want to get all of us say a few words, and also Amir to also speak, and that so we can be on film. So we love just a few minutes, just to tell how you feel about it, because this helps us push our program even better for the people that are listening to, and all of us need to tell it one way or the other. So we want to hear.
Looking at people who,
yeah, and so I'm trying to grab at people while we're filming,
right.
and Olive and the grandson Elijah Muhammad, the grandson Amir Muhammad, Sister Lottie. We need to talk about Sister Lottie. We can't leave her out. and Sister Clara Muhammad. So that's why I said we borrow him while we can. So Brother Olive Muhammad, please give us a kind few couple
Assalamu
words.
alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, dear family. And I mean that in every sense of the word. We are a family. I think Allah blessed us to come today to see what your effort is. And alhamdulillah, I'm very, my heart's full that the joy that we are as who grew up as youth, as babies in this community, have grown up with an appreciation of what Allah has blessed us with, what He's continued to bless us with. And, you know, one of the things we all know that Allah hates is ingratitude. We got to be, we are grateful that Allah blessed us, what He's given us, and we got to show that gratitude by, you know, making sure our history is preserved, make sure that it continues, and Sister Lynn, and Hafiz, and Brother Lester, and all you have done so well, Sister Fatimah, and everyone else who have done so much, that I am obligated to offer my help, my support, my family's support, because we're all a family. You know, I'm blessed to be of the Muhammad family, and you know that Allah blessed me. It had nothing in my doing. I had nothing to do with how I came here. And Allah blessed me to be of that family, and I thank Allah for my family and all that they have done to elevate our awareness in Islam first, establishing Islam in America, and then continued development of Islam and growth of Islam in America. And we have to make sure that people don't think that Islam just came through Malcolm. Islam came here by someone else.
That's right.
You know, Islam was established by the Muhammad family, starting with Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah.
You know, Farad Muhammad came and gave a message to a man, and he stayed and developed it and watered that plant and that seed and developed it. He did all the hard work. He ran for his life, you know, and worked his whole life to develop that. And that was put into his sons, his children, and all of those who helped. And you know, unfortunately, we are losing our pioneers. And Allah knows when He's going to take one of us. As we think we are young and we have more life to live. But we have a lot that we have to be grateful for and make sure it is preserved with those who we leave behind. But I'm so grateful for our pioneers, and I want to make sure that if any time we're in Janazah, we got to let the family know we appreciate the efforts of that individual, of those individuals that work with our leadership, that helped our leaders to produce what they did. They didn't do it in the closet by themselves. The pioneers are the ones that helped our community. We have to make sure that we let the legacy of our leaders be known, sure, but our pioneers who work with them to help to develop that, those have to be preserved also. So, alhamdulillah, you all should know of the Community Center, who is a foundation that we have established back in 2006. We got as a foundation, we are still an active foundation. We're not doing as much as we should do, but I am going to talk with my board and my other individuals and stuff how we could come together as a collective to work together, because it's bigger than an organization, it's bigger than one person. We have to all come together and do an umbrella effort, push forward to make sure that this continues, that we all write books, that we all do documentaries, that we all do interviews, that we all do something to make sure that our history is preserved and it continues beyond us and beyond our families. So, alhamdulillah, thank Allah.
Yes, ma'am. If you all don't mind, I'll keep my spot right here. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm just going to say a few things, you know, and to reiterate some of what Brother Olive already mentioned. I mean, it's about the pioneers, it's about the unity. I mean, you know, you got to go back to the beginning of this. There was one beautifully concerned female that actually introduced the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to Farad Muhammad. That was my grandmother. Praise and peace, may Allah's prayers and peace be upon her always. And grandmother did some things seen and unseen that if she had not done them, this community would not exist today, period. And one thing was introducing Farad Muhammad, introducing her husband to Farad Muhammad. The next thing is, grandmother was extremely instrumental in standing up and making sure that there was a school for the children. The next thing, when her husband went to prison, along with approximately 90 some odd brothers from just Chicago area, including my dad, and I'll tell a funny story. My dad was the last to go because he was a fair-skinned fella. You know, the FBI, he thought he was a free man. He thought he was man. He passed over me. Daddy was light-skinned, you know. He was walking with his suit. He was all, you know, he told a story, so I remember it clear as daylight. Daddy said I was walking down, I got me a bite of an apple and tapped me on the shoulder and said, William Fagans, because that was his slave name, as they said back then. William Fagans, he says, yes, he says, come with us. And he went right in there and joined the rest of the private years and went on in prison with him. But there were, again, 90 some odd other brothers that did the same thing. The FBI picked up all of them. That left the movement on the senior brothers and the sisters. Sister Clara took up the leadership unofficially while her husband was incarcerated, while her husband was on the run. If Sister Clara had not done that, we would not have a community today. I can go into so much more depth of what I've learned from listening to my father, my mother, my sister, and my uncles, and I give you one. Just recently, Brother John Ali, you all may remember him, he was the National Secretary. I asked Brother John Ali a question. I said, Brother John says, what role did my mother play in, you know, I heard that she traveled with Brother Malcolm when she established the mosque. What role did my mother play? He said, brother, your mother was a pivotal role. He didn't use the exact words, but your mother's role was pivotal because who knew Malcolm X? He said Sister Lottie was known by everyone nationwide. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent Sister Lottie to introduce Brother Malcolm to the community so that he could do his work and so Sister Lottie could do her work. So they worked together until I was conceived and born, and then Mommy had to stop. She used to travel with Brother Malcolm to establish those mosques. She introduced Brother Malcolm, she spoke to the sisters, he spoke to the brothers, they moved to the next mosque. And just going to speak briefly about my dad, and all of you got a story to tell with Auntie and Uncle too when you get the chance to do it, because Uncle Jabba had a lot to do with that, with the baker. Okay, Uncle Jabba tell you a beautiful story about how he didn't start the bean pie, but he sure enough refined it and made it what it is today. So, my dad was the community's commercial artist. Every Savior's Day, he painted every one of those signs. He would spend painstaking hours in the basement, hours at a time. A board, I don't know how tall, I was a little guy, but the board seemed like it was from the floor to the ceiling, and there was Daddy painting them, and he'd roll them up on one end as they dried, and he'd bundle them all up and take them to the Coliseum. That was the first place that we had. But Daddy did that. Daddy worked as a manager at the restaurant, the grocery store, and I'm telling this story because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad put his family to work. Every one of the pioneers around him, they didn't rest. They worked together cohesively, all the pioneers. There was nobody around sitting idle. They were all together in unity, you know, and it was just such a beautiful thing to witness as a child. You know, by the time I came along, man, we had school buses, it was together, you know. Wasn't living in no more shacks, wasn't putting cardboard in shoes no more. We were doing okay. You know, I didn't miss no meals. You know, we had the apartment on 71st Street. Everything, you know, we were doing okay. But I just want to let you know there is an undercarriage story. And that story also has to be recognized as a surface story. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was a brilliant genius of a man. And Allah blessed him with an insight beyond what Farad gave him. And if you look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's work, his work evolved over time. He had what Farad gave him, but he evolved it. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the 50s, he brought us as close as he could with his education understanding without being able to read in the Arabic. He brought in teachers to teach us how to pray, to establish Friday prayer. He did all of that. We got away from it, but I can remember as a child doing sajda in school. Minister James Shabazz taught us how to pray properly. We got away from it. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. But there's a beautiful story to be told if all of us would reach inside of us, like the brother there, Brother Charles. You tipped the iceberg, brother. You ain't said it all. You can tell a whole lot more about that story that you got.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Praise be to Allah, and I'm glad to be here. And thank you all for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much.